been a member of Parliament for how many years now, Arnold?
Garnett and I actually both got elected at the same time, so since 2015, just over 8 years.
Well, okay, well there you go, that's exciting. So you guys have been compadres for quite some time now. I don't know, you're kind of like the Bobbsey twins, but members of Parliament, Bobbsey twins. Both from Alberta. Arnold is from up north, and he's been on all sorts of different committees. I thought the interesting groups that he's involved in are, he's in the Parliamentary Uyghur Friendship Group. That's been a very big focus both of Arnold and Garnett over the years, because we know there's a real challenge for the Uyghur Muslims in China. We've done a lot of petitions, which have been headed up by the two of them, so that's very appreciated. He's also on the Canadian Parliamentarians for Freedom of Religion or Belief, and the Parliamentary Friends of the Kurds. Let's see, he's been reappointed to the Standing Committee of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, which makes sense. He has a lot of people in his own riding up there that he's got some great contacts with. And the thing that really has set Arnold apart is his work in fighting against online sexual violence and human trafficking. He actually introduced a motion, M47, that instructed the Health Committee to examine the public health effects of the ease of access and viewing of online content and online violent and degrading sexually explicit material on children, women, and men. And he was able to work across party lines to move this forward. Now, I don't believe there was a whole lot of recommendations that came out of it, but I'm very thankful that Arnold has really continued to push on this issue. It's a very important issue for those of us who have children. We're very concerned about them. Human trafficking is another very important issue that has become even bigger issue in the Fraser Valley, actually, as the time rolls on. Let's see here. So Garnett, he's been active on many high-profile domestic and international human rights issues. His interest in human rights was shaped by his experience of his grandmother, a Holocaust survivor. So that's something that Garnett has really reached out to the ethnic communities, the ethnic religious communities, to ensure that we are, as Canadians, protecting them. So the Uyghur situation, obviously, we need to continue as Canada to be concerned not just about those here in our own ridings, in our own communities, but also those internationally if we can help. Let me see. There's so many things to say about Garnett. Canadian parents are becoming more and more concerned about parental rights. So by all means, add that in as well. So here we go. Thank you for coming.
It's great to be here. The weather's beautiful. It's only been raining half the time. So thanks for ordering that up for us. I really appreciate it. I've been a member of Parliament since 2015. My name is Arnold Vierson, member of Parliament for Peace River, Westlock, and Northern Alberta. And I have been on the fight against pornography use in Canada ever since I got elected. Back in 2015, I got chosen to have a private member's bill. I must say, I was an auto mechanic before that. I didn't even know what a private member's bill was when that happened. But nonetheless, I got the opportunity to bring a motion into Parliament to study the impacts of pornography on Canadian society, M47. And been pushing that issue kind of ever since. I come to this through a story of a girl named Rehtaeh Parsons. Has anybody heard of Rehtaeh Parsons? So Rehtaeh Parsons was a 14-year-old girl from the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia, and she was raped at a party. And what was so daunting to me at the time was the boys that raped her posted the pictures and evidence of this on their social media. They weren't embarrassed about it. They thought this is a Friday night thing to do. And it struck me, Aaliyah, my daughter who's here today, she was a brand new little baby at the time. I was a new dad, and it just struck me as to why would these boys think that this was so appropriate that they would post this online? And through my research around that, I came to understand that what they were acting out was just something that they were watching all of the time. And that story of Rehtaeh Parsons, so when I became a member of Parliament, I was pretty adamant I wanted to do something about that. And so that led me down this road of fighting pornography use in Canada. The impacts of pornography use in Canada are long and varied, and they really impact human trafficking as well. So human trafficking, modern day prostitution, pornography is our marketing tool. It is what drives the demand for prostitution, but it is also the thing that educates our children on what's to be expected of them. And people who are being prostituted are often groomed into that life by the pornography use that is happening across this country. So fast forward a couple of years, I passed M47. I've been pushing this issue for a while. I'm not getting a lot of traction. We've been pushing age verification, kind of just, but there was in 2020, kind of all the sand shifted. The New York Times did an expose article that's called "The Children of Pornhub," and that caused Justin Trudeau. You might remember he was coming out of his cottage every morning during the middle of COVID. And that kind of changed the narrative for a change. Was instead of being asked about COVID, he was being asked about, what are you going to do about this company called Pornhub, which is located in Canada, which they claim that they are the largest porn company in the world. And they are exposing our children to this stuff, but also there's a whole bunch of kids that are ending up being, their nude images are showing up on that website. What are you going to do about it? And from that moment on, we've had a series of events that have happened in Parliament that bring us to today with Bill S210. There was an ethics committee report that they did. They studied this stuff. They brought the executives of Pornhub to Parliament and questioned them extensively. Senator Bill Deschênes, who was the person that first introduced this bill into Parliament, she was really passionate about doing something about this, and I've become friends with her, and she's like, Arnold, we need to do something about this. I said, this is awesome, I've got a bill, and I don't have a number that I can put it on, so please, if you take it over, that would be fantastic. So she's initiated Bill S210. She ran it through the Senate. It passed without opposition in the Senate. It passed unanimously through the Senate. And then it passed, then it came to the House of Commons. Our colleague, our nice colleague, a Conservative member of Parliament, Karen Vecchio from London, Ontario, she adopted it in the House of Commons, so she's been the one bringing it through on our side. And so it has had one vote in the House of Commons so far, of which all the Conservatives voted for it, all the NDP voted for it, all the Bloc voted for it, all the Green Party voted for it, and 15 Liberals, so the majority of the Liberal Party, the vast majority of the Liberal Party did not support it. So it's now at committee, and we're hoping that before the summer, it will be back. What Bill S210 does is it makes it mandatory for pornography companies to do the same thing that your local corner store has to do. We're saying you have to verify the age of those that are consuming your products. We're not real specific on how you do that, in the same way that we're not specific about how your corner store does that. But we say you have to verify, it has to be meaningful age verification. And if kids are getting onto your website, we have a problem. And so there would be fines associated with a violation of the criminal code if kids are getting onto your website. So people always ask me, well, how is that done? How is it done? Like, it's easy. At the corner store, you see the person, you can make a judgment as to their age by looking at them, but if you're not quite sure, you ask for their ID, and that'll verify. We already do this online with online gambling, with online liquor sales, online cigarette sales, online pot sales. In fact, in Ontario, there are 10 companies that are in the business of doing online age verification. And so we anticipate that pornography companies would engage those companies. People are always concerned about having to give their ID and things like that. And we say, well, we're not asking to identify who you are in order to get access. All we're doing is asking for your age to be verified. And then, in fact, we've put in some clear statements in the bill around that the data may not be collected. Any data that is collected must be deleted after the age has been verified. So we're not pursuing an identity. We're pursuing age verification, and that's been our the only pushback we've been getting on is generally around that. The other pushback we get around it is, it doesn't go far enough. Why aren't you just banning all the pornography on the internet? And And so I say to everybody that says that, I said, please show me the bill that's introduced that. I'll work on that too. But at this point, this is the bill that we have 3/4 of the way through the Parliament, and I'm really excited to see just before, like we anticipate just before the summer that this will come back to the House of Commons for its final vote and then be enacted into law. So that's the plan, but things can happen. So we're excited about it for sure. So Garnett, you got something on that?
Yeah. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I'll share a few additional thoughts and look forward to your questions and comments. And I've been at a few of these town halls on this issue in the past, and it's been incredible to see the response from people. At the same time, this isn't a bill that has gotten a lot of public attention yet, so I think it's really important for you to know and be ready to take some action in support of this bill. Arnold described the mechanics of the legislation very well. It's very simple. If we already require age verification for things that we as a society accept are adult activities, and we already do it on the internet, tobacco, alcohol, gambling, then why has this not happened in the case of sexual images? And why do we have a situation where very, very young children are exposed to horrifically violent, often, sexual images at a very, very young age? So requiring meaningful age verification to line up with what is required offline and what happens online for other activities seems like just a no-brainer. And I commend Arnold's long-standing work on this, because what strikes me is that we have a lot of discussions in Parliament about the consequences of early exposure, in particular to young boys, of violent pornography. The consequences of that, such as increasing problems of violence against women, for example. And yet there's not enough people willing to actually talk about not the only cause, but certainly one of the causes of that violence, which is people starting at a young age, seeing these kinds of images and then having a tragic kind of normalizing effect on their brain to think this is just the way things are when it's not, and it shouldn't be. So what I want to add as well is that we are seeing a significant effort by the pornography industry to push back against this legislation, to spread misinformation about this legislation, and to try to protect their bottom line in the process. Right before Liberals voted against this bill, we know, we have records of it, that representatives of the pornography industry were actively lobbying the Liberals prior to that vote. And you see this effort to create doubt around the legislation, to say, well, what about this problem, what about that problem? I would say this, it's a very well-drafted piece of legislation. All the pieces are buttoned up in it, because the legislation shouldn't prescribe a specific method of age verification. It wouldn't make sense for it to, because technology is going to continue to change. In general, legislation shouldn't be highly prescriptive in a space where technology is going to change. The legislation should establish the principle, the requirement. The principle, the requirement is you have to verify the age. And for the next 20, 50, 100 years, there's going to be changes in technology, but that principle should stay the same. You have to verify the age of a person before offering them something that is only appropriate for adults. That is a reasonable principle that should continue regardless of the technology. So the legislation should establish that principle and be open-ended in terms of technology, so that the right mechanism can fit in with that reality. But we see this misinformation, this effort by the pornography industry to protect its bottom line. And so this is what I think shapes the battle that we're in. This is a common sense piece of legislation. It was unanimous in the Senate. 4 out of 5 parties support it in the House of Commons. But there will be pressure from this very narrow, well-funded, well-organized interest. And to combat that, we need wider awareness among the public, and we need members of Parliament to hear from their constituents. I think the thing about this issue as sort of political issues, it's just difficult to talk about, right? Like talking about pornography, talking about violent sexual images, it's the kind of issue where the vast majority of people agree, yeah, we need to protect kids from these images. It's just not a very nice thing to talk about. But we need to confront it, we need to take it on, because we need to protect our kids. And so that involves spreading the word. So please, we have a great turnout tonight, but I want so many more people to hear this message. So please share this information with people in your community, in your circles, and contact your local members of Parliament. So if there were a few exceptions, but chances are if you have a Liberal MP, they voted against this legislation. So push them to change their vote in support of the third reading. If you have an NDP member of Parliament, we know the Liberals try to exert pressure on the NDP over various things. So if you have an NDP or a Conservative member of Parliament, thank them for voting the right way at second reading, and let them know that you're watching and you'd like to have their support at third reading as well. We need people. We need elected officials to hear from their constituents, to know that this is an important piece of legislation and that we want to see it pass. So with that, I'll end my comments, and in addition to hearing from you on this issue, people may have come with other questions on other issues. My suggestion would be if we take questions and comments on this issue first, and then other issues kind of after that.
Is Byron there?
I'll just, one more thing, I guess. This is kind of, being that we're both from Alberta, it's not something that's necessarily alive, but a bunch of our other meetings today, we were getting asked about this SOGI 123. And I would say that this bill fits into part of the push from parents to stop the over-sexualization of our children. And that's, folks are asking me how this bill fits in with that fight, and I would say that that is a big part of what parents' concerns are around a lot of these things, is this hypersexualization of our children, and this bill fits really nicely in trying to prevent that, for sure.
While we're trying to fix the second microphone, I have a quick question. I know that on my own social media, people were kind of talking about this bill, S210, as if it was the other bill which is coming from the Liberals, which is C63, which they call an online harms bill. And it's supposed to protect children, but if you actually look at the bill, it is far more than that. Whereas this bill, the S210, is very practical and can go right away, right?
I wouldn't use the word far more. I would use it's far less. It's a kind of a bait and switch. It says prevent online harms, and all of their media around it is to prevent, is to keep children safe online. But it actually doesn't do anything in that regards. What it does do is it has a criminal code amendment, so it puts into the criminal code a hate crime, which is an emotion greater than disdain or dislike. So you could be violating the criminal code by having an emotion that's greater than disdain or dislike. So that's really worrisome. That's the one thing that the bill actually does. The other thing that the bill does is it creates a commission and an ombudsman. And a 24-hour takedown. So if your images show up on the internet and you don't like them to be there, you can petition the company to take them down, and they have to take them down within 24 hours. That's what the bill does. I don't think that having your image taken down 24 hours after it gets put up is appropriate. I think your image shouldn't show up on the internet unless you consented for it to be there. And I have another bill that works on that as well. But we know what the problems are in many of the cases, and we should be criminalizing the problems that
that we have, not setting up a 1-800 call your ombudsman because you face some problems on the internet. We want to ensure that if you're facing online stalking, that be illegal. And we've said that to the government too. We know what the harms are. We don't need another body to study this and come up with recommendations. That's what the bill does.
Yeah, and just to make sure people have in their minds the different bill numbers, right? So there's Bill C-63. 63, this is the Liberal government's what they call their online harms bill. This is a bill that does not protect children. It does not protect people from non-consensual images because it fails to apply criminal code sanctions to criminal behavior. It just adds, as Arnold said, additional bureaucracy. Meanwhile, the weight of that bureaucracy also comes down hard on free speech. So Bill C-63, it comes down hard on free speech, and it fails to protect kids. And I think people rightly say, okay, we need to protect kids, so what's the alternative? We have the alternative. It's Bill S-210 is one piece of protecting kids. Arnold has another bill. I don't want to introduce a third bill to the discussion. It's C-270. But the point of some of these other bills, S-210 and others, is that they actually use criminal law to say you cannot sexually abuse kids on the internet by exposing them to these images. You cannot put people's images online without their consent. That's a category of criminal activity. That's very different from C-63, which is ineffective at protecting kids, and it goes after free speech. So we're saying S-210 is targeted, is effective, and deals with the protection of children. Bill C-63 is actually a government power grab, an attack on free speech, and it's ineffective against protecting kids.
Okay, so now that I have the second microphone working, I'll take some questions. Who would like to ask them? Okay.
Question on S-210. Does it run, well, put it this way, will it shut down Sochi? I got a 9-year-old grandson being exposed to imagery and conversations from teachers wearing rainbow ribbons around their neck and all this other leafy description. And I would say it runs afoul, very close to pornographic.
No, it will not. Because the bill only tackles online platforms operating for a commercial purpose. So it will not shut down the SOGI. It's connected in that it's tackling the over-sexualization of our children. But the SOGI fight is a school board fight and a provincial fight for sure. There is some talk about tackling some of the keeping women's spaces safe at a federal level. Our leader Pierre Poilievre has talked about that, defense of women's sports, that kind of thing. But that's from the way up at the federal government's level. What happens in the schools is not really our purview, despite maybe my personal opinions on it.
Next question. And the rolling mic over here.
I'm happy with what you're doing with this bill. My question is it able to deal with sites that are outside of Canada? Like, are you able to control it beyond things like Pornhub?
Yeah, so Pornhub, MindGeek, this kind of umbrella company, operates out of Canada, out of Montreal, but it is the largest entity. They claim they own 80% of the online pornography. So tackling it in a Canadian context, in fact, the rest of the world is asking us why we aren't dealing with this. So this will have a huge impact on the Canadian context, but also on the whole worldwide context. I think it will work in a Canadian context for outside folks as well. Great Britain, France, Germany, several American states have introduced or passed similar legislation. Germany has just kicked out 2 websites
governments out of their country saying you're not welcome to be available here. So we'll see how that works here in Canada. But it seems to be working in other jurisdictions, and so I'm hopeful that here in Canada as well we'll be able to do that.
I know I was very thankful when you at committee brought the Pornhub CEO, was it CEO? You got him into committee, he had to testify, and it was really shocking to hear how he thinks he's a regular businessman who's ensuring that his customers get the best quality product out there. I don't know if you want to talk about that. So committee, just for those who don't know, committee is like completely separate meetings that are held with a number of MPs from all of the different parties. They gather around the table and they bring witnesses. And Arnold was able to bring I think it was 2 of them from Pornhub, and they have to testify. They actually have to, they're under oath to give the truth, and it's really shocking sometimes to hear some of the things that they say. So maybe you want to speak to that real quick. Well, somebody else, let's be another question.
Yeah, so we were able to, it's kind of like a court of law in a similar way. If you don't appear at Parliament, you can be charged with contempt of Parliament. You don't go to jail for it, but it becomes a public spectacle, and you may be publicly reprimanded if you don't. So folks do appear at committee. We can have them arrested and brought to committee, and so that was the threat that these 2 officials from Pornhub were facing. The CEO and the Chief Operations Officer, the COO, they appeared at the committee. One of the very interesting things was I asked them about there's an alias. They have a public spokesperson, and they use this name. But we had video footage of it looked like the same guy 3 times, and every time there was a different name. And so I asked them about, like, okay, who is this person, and who is that person, and they said, oh, that's an alias that we use to protect our personal identity. And I was like, well, you're very concerned about protecting your personal identity, but you don't seem at all concerned about protecting the identity of the people who have been persecuted and whose images have been put up online and on your website without you ever verifying who they are, and that had their lives destroyed, in many cases committed suicide over this.
Am I right in saying that at that time, because of the work that you guys did with committee, a whole bunch of material had to be removed from the internet because it was there illegally?
So, because of the work we did at committee around there, we had Visa and MasterCard and PayPal all examined their relationship with MindGeek and decided after 2 days that they were no longer doing business with Pornhub MindGeek. And after that happened, they did their own internal audit and removed 10 million videos, about 60% of their product or their content at the time. So we've had some effect just in that already, and we're hoping to just make sure that we can keep kids off their websites. Yes, sir.
I agree with the photo verification, like a lot of things. Like when mom gets some medications at home, you have to set a photo verification for that medicine to come. Even some purchases that you make online that are high volume, high price, they usually like to have your photo registered with your ID as well. And another aspect I really like about it is, like, in society, when young kids see images like this, it becomes normalizes them in their young mind of like training and as they evolve. I think that is something that this could really help prevent, is kind of go back to some of those values of, you can say religious or whatever, but a lot of people do believe in like not pulling out till you're married. And like a lot of society these days, the sexualization for the last decade, 2 decades, I think like images of sexual content have been put out there, and as society we've normalized it. Where if you go back to the parents' generation, people didn't dress like that. And I think this could actually have a really good impact in ways.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I mean, I think the watchword of our modern society is supposed to be choice, right? In the sexual domain, in particular. I think it's important to underline how this early exposure to certain materials really it robs people of the ability to make a choice when they're at a level of maturity where they're able to do that. When you've got 10, 11, 12-year-old boys that are encountering this material, they have no ability to understand or contextualize or think through what implications this is going to have for them for the rest of their lives. So, we're not proposing anything that's going to try to shape the choices that a mature adult makes who says, no, I want to do this. Right? But a person who's an adult who comes to that, they're able to perceive the impacts, the consequences, and they can choose to go down that road legally. But that's very different from really the loss of consent that's associated with very young children being exposed to this. This is why it's widely recognized that exposing children to sexual images is a form of child abuse.
I think it's Sochi in a way, right?
Well,
schools with the books.
I mean, there's different levels of government, right? Obviously, we said our view as a conservative party is we support parental rights, parental involvement. The working out of that is at different levels. But yeah, we believe in parental rights. In terms of a federal area, this is something we can do within federal jurisdiction, right? And never expect one bill to solve every problem, but this bill, especially a private member's bill, because there's generally a more limited scope that you can pursue. But this bill will be very significant in terms of protecting young children from abuse, protecting their ability to make age-appropriate decisions when they reach the appropriate age, and not to have their perceptions of sexuality shaped through this early exposure.
Hi, I have a question in regards to the harms bill. I wanted to know what level it's at right now in the writing, like where it is in the process, and also what are the penalties involved regarding, speaking about, like I have friends that have businesses online that are life coaches, and they want to know what are they allowed to say, what not to say, and also pastors have a concern as well about this, and not just pastors, but also religious leaders that stand for traditional family and moral values. So I'm just wondering I heard something about life imprisonment, if you could go into detail more about that, and how we can prepare ourselves, or how we can push back against this. I mean, I've signed petitions, I've passed the petitions around. I don't know what else we can do with it.
Well, I'll start with the petitions, I guess. Thanks for signing petitions. Garnett and I have a competition to see who presents more petitions in Parliament, so please sign more petitions. But the signing of a petition really helps us, particularly if it's like a hard copy paper petition, because it allows us to raise the issue. For every 25 names, we are allowed to then speak for about 25 seconds in Parliament. And when there's 338 members of Parliament all wanting to speak all of the time, it's tough to get an allowance to speak, kind of thing. So petition, 25 signatures allows us to get our 25 seconds in on a particular issue, which if we raise it over and over and over again, if we do it every day, eventually they're like, oh, there's Arnold standing up and talking about that topic again, right? But it starts to become part of their awareness, so definitely thanks to you for doing that. C-63 has been introduced, so I don't think we've had a single minute of debate on it. It's getting an extremely rough ride in the public. We can only speculate as to what the Liberals are going to do with it now, but it's right at the very beginning of a long process. It's getting full opposition from our party. I don't know about the other parties, but there doesn't seem to. There is only a year and a bit left in this Parliament, so the election is at the question everybody wants to ask all the time. When is the next election? The election is scheduled for October 2025, and so if Garnett and I have anything to do with it, we'll be able to push that bill out past that time and have a new Parliament. but the government could push it really fast, and so it is good to keep it on your radar and be signing those petitions for sure.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that. So, in order to move it through Parliament, the government does need at least one other party to work with them on it, and it's not going to be us. We've already, I mean, just this past week, we voted no confidence in the government, and we have repeatedly expressed no confidence in the government. The other parties are propping them up on budget and other things. In terms of this piece of legislation, it's been tabled. As Arnold said, it's getting a rough ride. Elon Musk, Margaret Atwood, and everybody in between has criticized it. But it's hard to predict what they will do. But I think increasing more awareness. I mean, two pieces. One is increasing more awareness about the problems with Bill C-63. But I do think highlighting that there are real alternatives to that is to protect kids from abusive behavior. In Bill C-63, I mean, Arnold mentioned the 24-hour takedown. This highlights the problem to me. So it's the internet. 24-hour takedown does nothing. The image is out there, right? It's going to continue to be propagated and shared other places, even if you have 24-hour takedown. So rather than saying, okay, if there's an intimate image of a child or non-consensual, then it should be taken down within 24 hours. So how about, no, it can't be posted in the first place, and the person who posted in the first place is punished for posting it and for allowing it to be on their site. These are the kinds of proposals that Conservatives have already put forward in legislation. And bizarrely, the Liberals voted against S210 because they said, oh, we have another bill coming, another bill that doesn't solve the problem. But what they want to do is they want to loop together these ineffective measures on speech, these ineffective measures on protecting children with attacks on free speech. What we've said is, no, let's have effective measures to protect people from real online harms.
One thing I didn't answer, you were asking about what the penalty is. It's maximum 10 years in prison. I don't think life, but 10 years. But 10 years in prison in Canada is about as long as any like short of murder. Everything else you're getting 10 years is, and then these, ironically, are these interesting things is the Liberals are generally opposed to mandatory minimums. Like, they haven't proposed a 10-year maximum sentence for anything. If they've done a criminal code amendment up until this point, it's generally been to reduce the sentencing. C-75 was their big justice overhaul bill, where they took indictable offenses which are more than 2 years in prison, and they made them hybrid so that you could get, for human trafficking, for example, you could get a $2,000 fine and house arrest, right? That, like, this bill, C-63, is just like wildly in both directions. Like, it does nothing to do what they're stating it's going to do, yet they put this new thing, which is a crime that is hate, which is an emotion greater than dislike, and if you commit that crime, 10 years in prison. So it's wild. It's all that I have to say about that.
I think during my time in Parliament, I was shocked at how they do utilize a messaging that's not correct. So like you say, this bill, they call it an Online Harms Act bill that's supposed to protect children, but does nothing of the sort. It actually, hurts our free speech. So, but the problem is when they say this is an Online Harms Act bill, most people are very, very busy, don't have a lot of time to pay attention, and especially not even to come out to an event like this, right? We don't have that much time. And so they utilize these quick, false statements in order to make people think they're doing something about the issues that all of us care about, and they're not actually doing anything. So that was, for me, I was absolutely shocked by the hypocrisy of it. And anybody who has taken time to watch CPAC and watch the House of Commons will find that they make statements that they don't actually hold to. It sounds great and wonderful, but it's not actually true. So, another question. We have time for questions? Yes.
I think thank you for you have been very care about what's happening to those younger kids. You also mentioned the case Amanda Todd. Do you think the bill as 210 have been played a role and really effective to prevent this kind of tragedy happens again?
For sure, I'm very familiar with the Amanda Todd case. I think my other bill, S-270, would actually do more for that, because in her case, her images were shared online, and she switched schools several times, trying to run away from them, and every time that she got the images taken down on one website, they appeared on another one. And so the bill C-270 is my private member's bill, which was supposed to be debated, a first hour debate on Friday, but is now, when we get back there, it'll be the first private member's bill up when we get back. It calls for, in both the cases of age and consent, that a company that's putting them up online for a commercial purpose have documents verifying the age and consent. One of the challenges the police have right now is if your images show up online, the police have to prove that you never consented to that image being up, and they have to prove, in the case of an underage person, that the person is underage. Both of those things are doable, but it's difficult. This would be a separate records-keeping violation of the criminal code, where it says if you fail to keep a record of the age and consent of an individual, maximum of 2 years in prison. And so that would then reverse the onus from the police having to prove that you're of age and that you consented or didn't in both of those cases, to the company must show that they have the documentation. If they don't have the documentation, she might be of age, she might have consented, but if they don't have the documentation to prove that, up to from a fine to up to 2 years in prison for that. So that would help a little bit more. And that also goes. That's also my counter to the 24-hour takedown that the Liberals have proposed in their C-63, where we say that 24 hours is not good enough. You gotta verify age and consent before any images go up, not 24 hours later. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions?
Where the offender is a corporation, who gets sentenced for 2 years plus for violating that?
Yeah, so in the case of corporation, it's a $100,000 first-time offense fine, and the second time is $1 million. So
it's just financial penalties?
It's financial penalties, yeah. No, not because we can't jail corporations.
You could jail the representative.
Yeah.
Yes.